Hello, good morning. Welcome to Change Conversations with Joy Isaacs. Today I am joined by a fantastic change leader, change agent. She has many different titles she goes by, but I'm joined by a professional in the field of change and transformation who's going to share with us today her views on change, collaboration, and we're going to be having a really interesting discussion. So let's get into it. So welcome, Georgia.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Lovely to be here.
Thank you. So today on the podcast, we're just going to be talking about collaboration. I know we've had various chats offline and just been talking about this topic because it's a growing topic. There are a lot of articles out there. There's a lot of news out there about how successful change requires collaboration as a style, as a method, as an approach. And I just wanted to really get your views on it. So today we're going to be talking about change. We're going to be talking about collaboration and just how the relationships work in leading successful change and how they interrelate. So is that okay?
Yeah, perfect.
Great, amazing. So I've got some questions here just to get us going. And how would you describe your style of working with others, as a change professional?
I think most of it is around adaptability and understanding other people. So I've been doing change management for about 20 years.
Wow.
So working in lots of different companies, cultures, countries. So and every time, the dynamics of a group and the personality of people, they're very different.
Yeah.
So I spend the first part of a project, just observing, being quiet, just try to understand the culture and the environment, the ways of working of the company. And I found that is very useful for building then the long-term relationships.
Yeah.
And I sorry.
No, go on.
And I have an interest in, different cultures and different behaviors. So, and I think that that's really important as a change leader to actually understand, the people that you deal with, because then you have to adapt, as I said at the beginning, your style so you can collaborate more easily with people.
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely agree with everything you've said there. I mean, I love the word you use, adaptability. And that in itself is a skill, isn't it? That in itself it takes a specific type of art, craft. You have to really have a certain disposition, I think, to be adaptable. I don't think everyone's adaptable naturally. I think you have to do it consciously and intentionally. And I like what you said about that immersion that you do when you first join a company or start a project. You're immersing yourself in the culture and getting to know the people and how they work and how they interrelate and to build those relationships. So just tell me about some of those relationships then. How do you build that glue to make it to make for collaboration? Because collaboration is obviously with other people and people are different, aren't they? So how do you develop that?
Well, it starts, as I said, from, just adapting to the environment and then understanding what's in it for the other person.
Yeah.
And, how do we actually understand their perspective? So, for example, I've been in a few projects where there was resistance to change. And, you may say, okay, I'm never going to do this. And then you just start asking questions and just find out, the more about the person, how long they've been in the company, what their career has been like, and, their expectations. And sometimes that resistance to change is a lot of fear. And I think generally, especially, senior leaders, they're fearful of losing their power and influence.
Yes.
So being in a project where, for example, they were going to change the types of team, the sizing of the team. So if somebody had, a department of 150 people and they was going to shrink to 50, it may feel like it's demotivating.
Yeah.
Like, they're just losing some of that. So it's just about, understanding their point of view, perspective, and experience. And then, sometimes presenting the change in a way that actually is makes them more acceptable. In that case, it was about, even if it was going to lose some people, actually the ones they had left, they were more skilled. So actually that had great say in the future strategy of the company. And that's for senior leaders. For other people, sometimes for employees, well, in general, is fear of losing your job, or fear of the job changing. And that's another important consideration. And I think as a change leader, I've been spending a lot of time just talking with people in these kind of situations.
Yeah.
I was managing a people outsourcing in Australia, impacting, several hundred people that I had to choose whether to move to a different company. And just, even if I didn't have the information that they wanted about, legal stuff or pension, I was just prepared to just sit down with them and have a chat. And that helped to, you know, feel it, them realizing that it was just, yeah, I was friendly, it was a positive move. I was taking my time out to talk with them, and that helped them in that change journey and allay the fears that they had.
Wow. Yeah, that's an amazing style. That's an amazing that you have there in terms of getting that perspective. You use the word perspective to actually understand. And in change they talk a lot about having a deep understanding and deep awareness of where that person's coming from. Sometimes people use the word empathy, and they say be hugely empathetic, makes for a good change leader. And just describe there with your experience in Australia, really getting into the shoes, really understanding what these people's concerns are, what their interests are, what they're going through in order to be able to support them. And collaboration, one of the definitions of collaboration is sort of the action of working with someone to produce something. And how can you really work effectively with someone without knowing where they're coming from, taking into account their perspective, and like you said, adapting to them, getting to know them, building that rapport, that relationship. And that's so key. And I love what you said about resistance. It's something that it's commonly a word branded about, but really what it is, like you said, it boils down to sort of emotions. Fear. People actually feeling uncomfortable, feeling discomfort, feeling out of their comfort zone. And that it's just a human behavior. It's a human response. And we're all human. So in one way, one could think that that's super easy, to manage resistance and to collaborate and work with others, because you're a human, they're a human. Surely it should be so easy. But what are some of the things that make it difficult? What are some of the challenges that you face with actually being able to interact with people when there is resistance and you're trying to collaborate, when there's that friction? Sometimes that happens, right? On a project, you're working with someone, they're human, you're human, maybe you just don't have the same, your personalities aren't compatible, and they're resistant, not because they're fearful, maybe just because you just don't get on. Have you faced that or something similar?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, what, a word I'm going to bring in here is control. So if you're in control of the change, for example, I want to move house, I'm going to move to another country, is you actually look forward to the change because you're the agent of that. Often what happens in organizations, the change is imposed on you. You don't have any control. The organization makes a strategic decision and you'll just say, okay, I have to live with it. And I think that's all, as human beings, we struggle with, facing the control. And I think and we need to recognize it. And I think leaders, I believe, of an organization, they need to be more aware of this. Because they look at the change from their perspective of making it, but for other people, they're receiving it. So I think that's really important. And then the change, as a change leader, then you actually have to help the leader of the organization how to actually make it work. Another important element is time. I find that,
Yeah.
we all, given some time, we get around to the change. It
Yes.
could be, a few conversations, communications, a few, activities that you do to actually explain the change. So
Mm.
sometimes giving it time is
Mm.
enough. And, I experienced that in quite a few projects where there was a lot of resistance at the beginning. And then, I was just spending a lot of time there, going through the processes, the impacts. And I think, at the end of it, we implemented a change. It was in a call center. And I
Okay.
went back there after 5 months. I'm, happy to be in that office. And I just went to see the guys there. And one of them is said, oh, I'm so much more motivated in my job now than I was, just a year ago.
Wow.
And that was just because the job changed. It was super resistant at the beginning. And now it just thought, yeah, actually that was a good move. I would not have believed it, 1 year ago when we started. And I think that was my first project. And I'll just say, yeah, I think this is what I want to do in my
Wow, how
career.
rewarding. That is amazing. What a result, just being able to see someone go through that journey, the change curves, we talk about that, but actually go through not wanting something to embracing and even celebrating and reporting how what a difference it's made, what a positive impact it's made. So that's super rewarding. And I love how you said that, just giving it time. The way it starts is not the way it's always going to be. So I think as change leaders, I guess we just have to keep that open mind and share that open mind with others, because sometimes people are so, they have that fixed mindset, and that they're closed to it, and that's partly forms and plays into their resistance. But actually, we ourselves, I suppose, have to keep that open mind whilst we're leading change, to ensure that we continue to be collaborative, we don't shut down ourselves, as change leaders, when we come across people who aren't mindful towards the change, who aren't positive towards the change, um, and don't think it's going to end up well. You always get the saboteurs and the negative voice in the
Mm.
corner. So it's really important, I suppose. How do you keep that open mindset? How do you, for your own mindset as a change leader, how do you keep in that? I'm going to collaborate. I'm going to keep engaging, keep interacting. How do you prevent yourself from not shutting down?
I think it's about having. Have you come across the concept of a growth mindset?
Yeah, yeah.
Yep. So the book and the studies by Carol Dweck. And I think, once you start developing a growth mindset, this is who you are.
Mm.
You have to keep, working on it, from that basis. For
Yeah.
example, to me, it's about being aware of,
Mm.
your limitations or your biases as well.
Yeah,
So, just by the sheer fact of saying, okay, I'm aware that, I'm dealing with a person
yeah.
that is resistant to change.
Mm.
It's going to be hard, but, at the
Mm.
same time, instead of just saying, oh, I should stop talking with him or her, just say, okay, how can I do it? How can I go around it? And that's about
Mm.
having a growth mindset.
Yeah,
So, and I think if you don't have that, it's about learning how to develop it. It's a
yeah,
skill,
yeah.
same as any other, it's a
Mm.
capability.
Mm.
And if you already have it, to just keep practicing.
Keep developing, yeah, keep growing, yeah. Because I was mentioning earlier, the fixed mindset of others, but you yourself have to have that growth mindset and maintain it. Keep developing it, keep having that growth mindset in order to counterbalance, I suppose, the fixed mindsets that others may bring towards the change. And I really loved how you described your approach, because for me that sparks up creativity, that sparks up being a creative person. In You said about going around it, and that's looking at it from different perspectives, being creative in how you engage, in how you interact. And that's what, for me, that's what collaboration is all about. Would you like to share anything else with respect to your experiences with collaborations? Who are some of the key stakeholders that you collaborate with closely and have had the most success with?
I think probably project that springs to mind. It was a system implementation in just this large company. It was abroad in a Middle Eastern country, so the culture was already quite different.
Mm.
And I was seen a bit like the external person,
Mm.
and I just sort of established a strong relationship with the finance director, which was the main stakeholder.
Mm.
And by just creating this, collaborating with him, and working through him,
Mm.
he opened the doors,
Mm.
and he was making the announcements and the communications that I didn't have the influence to do it myself.
Mm.
And I think especially within that culture, and the gender roles, I think it was very important to have created this sort of strong collaboration with,
Mm.
with this man. Because
Mm.
then he was like he was doing, he was at the forefront of the communications, and I was
Yeah.
working in the background advising him.
Mm. Yeah. I love
And
that because, oh, go on.
I was going to say, sometimes this is one of the roles of, the change manager. You have to work in the background.
Yeah.
The most important person is the leader of the program, the CEO, the CIO, whoever you're working with, and you have to advise them on what's the best change approach.
Mm.
Rather than standing up yourself in front of a large audience and just telling people what's going on.
Mm. Yeah, I absolutely agree, and I think we've spoken about this in terms of being in the background, almost like the puppet master. Like you're pulling the strings, you're coaching, you're influencing in the background. No one, no one can always see those things that you do, the efforts, the time, the skill that it takes to do that, to influence, to change someone, to persuade them, to move the dial on their perspective, the hearts and minds piece. But that's so powerful and so key, and I love how you describe that collaboration, with the man you were working with there, because that just shows the power. It's actually quite a powerful position to be in. And you mentioned control before, but by being, sometimes people see being in the background as being out, not being powerful, not being prominent, because you're not at the forefront, you're not visible always. Your actions and aren't always visible in that way. But actually, it's such a powerful position because you can see it play out.
Yeah.
You made that suggestion, you planted that seed, and it germinated and bore fruit. And I absolutely, that's something that I absolutely love about change. But something I've found in my experience, working with so many different types of people, is some personalities who are at the forefront, some change, some leaders who are at the forefront in the organization have an expectation for you to go forward and do that, and take up that role. And sometimes they might feel that their personality, whilst they're leaders by default, not necessarily by not necessarily by will, in that sense. So sometimes they want to put forward the change person, and that's not a bad thing. But I think, like you said, it's about the right person being there, being the face, being at the forefront. And I just love the way you just described that collaboration, because that's one of the key ways to succeed when you're delivering change, is really collaborating effectively, and maintaining that collaboration can be quite a feat when you're working with so many different types of people.
Yeah. I know, definitely. And I like what you said. And, it really connects to the first point that we were talking, which is around adaptability. So, I've been working with clients where, as you said, I've been asked to be the person standing up in front of a large audience and communicating the change. And that's fine. That's what they wanted.
Mm.
And that's what was good for that program. While some other times, as you said, it's just about working the background, which is more successful. And to me, connects as well about, I like coaching people, and that
Yeah.
there is this idea: how do we help others to succeed? Which again
Mm.
is a form of collaboration, because you
Mm.
just see them grow. you see them change, and could be, coaching a leader to presenting or to coming across more assertive in front of the audience. And I've done that a few times where you just stand, you stand at the back of the room and you actually observe the reactions and the questions and how it comes across. And, it's a beauty to sort of see, just somebody grow and develop with your help.
No, absolutely. It's so rewarding. And as you said, just being able to observe that and see it play out, it's really empowering actually, and reinforces in yourself, some lessons, what you did well, what you can improve on. And I find that in change leadership, because it is, an art form, you're always growing, you're always developing, working with so many different people. They rub off on you, you rub off on them, you're influencing them towards the change, particularly those that you're collaborating closely with, but they're also impacting you. That's what relationships are all about. And I found that people that don't have this growth mindset that we've talked about, people that don't understand this, people that shy away or run away from it or resist collaboration, they don't achieve as much. You're working in your little silo, you're working in your little bubble, you lack perspective, you lack insight, you lack that empathy, and I've seen it so often, and I've often had to, be quite tactical and strategic in how I've helped to break down those silos, and seeing it bear fruit. Former colleague on a program I worked on, even contacted me, months after to say, yes, we have someone new, but that the silos are built up again. You're not there to, it's been successful for that time period, but the people had regressed and there wasn't that reinforcement. Because some people, you've been working in a siloed way for so long, you don't have that growth mindset developed, you're not developing yourself. And whilst we're there to influence, if there's not that reinforcement, which is so key in change, people regress. Often they go back to those old behaviors and it doesn't stick. The change might stick in terms of what you've produced, the solution, but the people themselves who are working, involved in various programs and projects, went on to do another program and those behaviors came up again. So it's an ongoing evolution, isn't it? It's something that it requires reiteration a lot of the time. And that's one of my passions, in change. It's really that reiteration, really that reinforcement. And sometimes we think about that just purely in relation to the change. But I've found that what's effective is reinforcing those behaviors of the people, the leaders as well. Because when they go on, that change was successfully delivered. It's stuck. People are behaving and doing things in the right way. Maybe it's system change, maybe it's policy, whatever the change is. But the people themselves need to be impacted, and that reinforcement for people is also so vital.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And, that's the part that always interested me the most around the change. And that's why I ended up studying a master's in behavioral science, because I really wanted to just sort of, study the academic side and the research. And that was an amazing experience. It was at the London School of Economics a few years ago, and it was I learned so much. And bringing that together with my practical experience as a change leader, I can see the sides, and I can look at some of my past projects and say, okay, yeah, this is the bit where I could have done something different. And I think we don't focus enough on behaviors. Sometimes change is about the communication, the training, telling people what to do, but not understanding, the layer, the core and the layers underneath, that once you change that, is it makes it much more sustainable. And and that applies to normal life as well. And probably is easy to explain to people in this way. How do you encourage somebody to do exercise? or to eat more healthily. And I think, so much research, it says, telling people doesn't work.
Mhm.
Bullying them, just say, oh, you must exercise, 10,000 steps per day, doesn't work. All of those things, none of them work. It is about the behavior.
Mm.
How do you actually change the behavior? And it's like a simple trick, for example, for the exercise, literally put the shoes just outside the bed. So that's the
Yeah,
first thing that you do.
yeah,
It's about making it easy. Or
absolutely.
exercising with friends, because
Hmm.
you have a commitment towards another person, and that reinforces your behavior. And then
Mm.
once you do it over a period of time, then you'll just say, okay, yeah, it becomes a habit.
Yes.
And that's what you were saying in terms of reinforcing that the
Mm.
change in the behaviors.
I absolutely love what you've just said, Georgia. And I think it just speaks volumes, that reinforcement, that instilling of the behaviors. I call it setting yourself up to win, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes people focus on, you've set me up to fail. I used to do employment law, and that was often something that you'd be arguing, in employment cases. You set this person up to fail, blah, blah, blah. There's so many concepts around that. But what about flipping it? Setting yourself up to win,
Mm-hmm.
right? Putting the shoes outside the bed. I used to put my gym kit, my jogging gear outside my bed, just literally lay it on a chair beside my bed. First thing in the morning, it's on, the water bottle's ready,
Yeah.
I've got my headphones, everything's set to go. And until that became a habit. And I went one whole year without missing a day of jogging. I'd go at the same time,
Yeah.
sometimes a different pathway, a different route, but often the same route as well. And even if it rained, even if it snowed, I might change the time if the weather was prohibitive, but I would always go. And I went a whole year without, and of course it became an absolute habit. It stuck. I reinforced the behaviors. But and there's so many examples of that where you just set yourself up to win, in that situation. And those behaviors, like you said, are then reinforced and are sustainable. So, it's just been so great talking to you today, talking about adaptability, the skill of coaching in the background with you developing. I love what you said about developing yourself with that growth mindset, and the beauty. I love that word. I picked it out. The beauty that you see when, it all manifests, it all evolves, and you get the reward, you get the result at the end. So I think, just to round off really on this conversation, Georgia, is there anything finally you'd like to say about your top tips with collaboration?
Probably I'll go back to what I just said from the beginning. So adaptability,
Hmm.
and just the capacity as well of working in the background as well, being
Mm.
that advisor role,
Yes,
that's really important. And
yes,
of course we have to mention, the growth mindset
yeah.
and focusing on the behaviors, which I think
Mm.
is the most important thing. And I think, just change managers, they need to really understand that more to make sustainable change.
Amazing. Absolutely love that. Thank you so much, Georgia. It's been a pleasure. We're going to definitely have to invite you back for more conversations like this. It's been so great to hear you talk to us about change, your experiences, your tips and advice on how to be a successful change leader and how to collaborate effectively. So thank you. I'm sure others listening have enjoyed as much as I have, and we'll see you again. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Joy. Talk
Take
soon.
care. All right. Bye-bye. Bye.